Marty Hogan, the best player in the world, the greatest racquetball player in history, those titles belong to Marty Hogan. He was introduced to the sport by his mother here in St. Louis, and it wasn't long before he was dominating the junior circuit. He moved to San Diego to pursue professional racquetball, and his career took off. He's credited with revolutionizing the game with a vicious serve as fast as 142 miles an hour. He won the U.S. Indoor Professional Racquetball National Championship 5 consecutive times. He also won the National Outdoor Three-Wall Championship. He was so dominant in his prime that he lost only 4 matches in 3 years. In 1 year, Marty won the Pro Racquetball Nationals, the Outdoor Racquetball Championship, and the Paddleball Nationals. He's the only player in the history of the sport to win all 3 titles in 1 year. After retiring, he returned to competition and won 14 times on the Legends Tour. Marty was named the Professional Racquetball Player of the Year an unprecedented 8 times and was ranked the #1 player of all time by the National Racquetball magazine. And he was inducted into the USA Racquetball Hall of Fame. And tonight we're honored to add the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame to his long and celebrated list of accomplishments. Here's Marty Hogan.
Well, Marty, I think Ron covered a lot of the stuff that we're going to cover here tonight.
Yeah, we're about done.
Yeah, let's go. Anyway, when you started playing racquetball, it wasn't really a popular sport. How did you learn to play it, and what got you interested in it?
Well, I was a seasonal athlete, I would say, as a youngster growing up here in St. Louis. I attended the Leduc High School and in the Leduc school system, and I started playing, playing other sports, and then all of a sudden, there was a sport, racquetball, that was at the local JCCA where I was basically playing football and baseball, and I just sort of took to it. Mm-hmm. And back when I first began playing racquetball, there was a ratio of 9-to-1 handball players versus racquetball players, maybe 50,000 in the country, and the sport was just right, kind of like being discovered.
It was kind of like in its infancy at the time.
Absolutely.
And at the J, did you have a coach who taught you the sport?
Well, my mom introduced me to the game, and there was also a number of very, very good racquetball players. We were lucky at that time, was like a little bit of like a mecca. And then racquetball sort of exploded in stuff, through the early 70s. And it was like nobody knew what racquetball was in 74. And almost like McDonald's in 76, there was a racquetball club within, a mile of where you live. They just sprang up.
Right. You were talking about being a seasonal athlete. What other sports did you play at Leduc?
Leduc, I was actually a running back, one of the smallest ones that they ever had. And I played baseball, and I was also on the gymnastics team.
Okay. So racquetball, though, became #1 for you, and you moved out to San Diego to pretty much follow your dream. And why did you go out there?
Pretty much so. I mean, out of high school, even though there wasn't, the only thing I ever really wanted out of racquetball as a youngster was to have an opportunity to get a scholarship to go to college. And with the boom of racquetball through the 70s, I was granted an opportunity to go to a number of different schools. Very surprisingly, a number of schools contacted me about representing them. And being a tour player, a semi-tour player, and I had been to San Diego and Southern California a lot, being from St. Louis and have an opportunity to go to San Diego and go to San Diego State, that was a real easy decision for me to make.
Well, I know it's a great conditioning sport. I still play, and it's a wonderful sport. If any of you have ever played racquetball, or if you haven't, it's a great conditioning sport, and one that'll get you back in shape even at my age. Anyway, but you've actually been credited with revolutionizing the sport. In what way did you do that?
Well, the game was a real kind of a pattern, kind of a finesse game. Before, I think, a kind of a generational athlete came into the sport. And I think what I did is I developed a swing technique of developing power. And not only just kind of regular power, but I was actually able to hit the ball considerably harder than everybody else. And at that time, too, I was able to do it with my backhand. So I basically came with a weapons arsenal of playing that my competitors weren't used to. So I had quite an advantage, and they saw my success and sort of said, you know, if we don't convert over, we're going to fall a little bit behind. So power racquetball became like the standard in the sport.
So power, how fast was your serve clocked at?
Back in the day, I was clocked at about 160 miles an hour on a serve. Now, imagine being hit by a ball at 160 miles an hour. A real good friend of mine, an ex-baseball player, Jeff Conine, who played baseball and also tried to play professional racquetball, told me that getting hit with a racquetball at 160 miles an hour was a lot worse than being drilled by a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. So
I can imagine. I've been hit a few times. So anyway, so how old were you when you won your first tournament?
my first pro event I won at 17, a professional ranking event at 17. And it was really actually kind of a fluke where everything just sort of came together and sort of really launched and catapulted my career.
That had to be very memorable for you, though.
Extremely, extremely. It was like it was kind of strange because after I won that, it was like everybody looked at me in kind of like a different light.
What year was that?
That was in '76.
Okay, and by 1979, you won the Pro Racket Nationals, the Outdoor Racquetball Nationals, and the Paddleball Nationals. The only player to win all three the same year. Quite an accomplishment?
It was quite an accomplishment, but a lot of those sports, as people in the sport know, requires a high level of conditioning, and quite frankly, in that day, I was in really good shape, and winning at paddleball and even racquetball back in those days is almost like an attrition kind of thing where you have to be in real good shape, and at that time, I was in pretty good shape.
I would imagine. Well, you were named the Professional Racquetball Player of the Year 8 times in the span of 12 years. Did you say you were on a roll, or?
That's pure luck right there, Myron. 8 years running. No, that was just, it was, you know, I mean, I was a real beneficiary of a lot of riding the wave and the crest of the popularity of the sport of racquetball. Because I see a lot of the football players and baseball players, a lot of guys use racquetball as an off-season conditioner. And it was just really a sport that if you went to college, you played racquetball. It's that kind of a social game.
Right. Well, your name became so well known that you were on the ABC Super Star competition?
Yeah.
And with the Paragon Fitness Challenge. Tell me about those.
Well, the ABC Superstars, as everybody probably knows, is an event way back in the when they used to invite athletes from a lot of different sports. And I was lucky enough that they recognized racquetball and recognized me to come and participate.
Great, great. Our fans in attendance can read a lot about this in the program tonight. But tell me, how many Halls of Fame are you actually in now?
I'm in a few. I'm in a few and stuff. I've been very lucky to be recognized over my career and everything. But this Hall of Fame is just as important as any accomplishment I've had.
You were telling me a dozen Halls of Fame you're in.
A few. A few.
Okay, lastly, you were telling me about a famous artist who painted you. How did that come about?
Well, that was really one of my, probably the greatest acknowledgement or whatever, that I got a phone call from Leroy Neiman that he wanted to do a painting and stuff of me for racquetball. And I got to be actually pretty good friends with him. He passed away a little while ago. But that was a great thing for the sport of racquetball to be recognized by such an acclaimed artist.
I would imagine.
Was.
Ladies and gentlemen, Marty Hogan.
Thank you very much.